welcome. I'm Jen Powder, founder and editor of Energy to Thrive magazine, and I'm super happy to be interviewing Amy Pearson. Amy, thanks for being with me today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So we can find you at livebrazen.com, right?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. And what I know about you is you're a master certified Martha Beck life coach. You're an author, you work with women, and you really help people recover from being approval addicts because you were once one too.
That's right. That's me.
And so what you guys need to know if you're watching this right now is Amy's article is in this current issue or the fall issue of Energy to Thrive magazine, and it's Confessions of an Overachieving Perfectionist and Are You an Approval Addict? So Amy, let's just get right in and talk about what that actually, how that shows up and how you would even know, because one of the things that you say is when you are an approval addict, you get praise.
Right.
Hence the addictive nature of it.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I kind of think of it as I'm kind of on an awareness crusade because I feel like it's a problem. We become addicted to these behaviors where we're trying to get people to approve of us or avoid rejection. And so it becomes sort of a habitual pattern of behavior. And so I call it addiction. And but it's kind of a hidden epidemic because let's face it, if you're a drinker, you've got a hangover to deal with. If you smoke, you smell, if you gamble, you have debt. But if you're addicted to certain kinds of behaviors where you're trying to manipulate other people's opinions of you, most of the time the feedback that you get is praise, or at the very least, you avoid making waves, you avoid any kind of social discomfort. So a lot of times we think that we are doing good, when people are happy. And so we don't see the negative consequences. And so it becomes invisible to us. And we, for me, the longest time, I kind of felt like, why am I so unhappy? Everything looks great. I'm doing everything the right way. Why am I so unhappy in my life? And so it was sort of a mystery for the longest time.
And that's what's so interesting, right? Like, do you think that women are on this path way more than what's probably recognized, generally speaking?
Absolutely. I mean, that is really it because, we are socialized to believe that, essentially what happens, I think, is that we are socialized to believe, that women are, supposed to look good. They're supposed to, supposed to be humble. They're supposed to, all of those things that we're socialized as women. And as a result, we compare ourselves to other women. We compare ourselves to some status quo. And then when we don't measure up, we kind of think that there's something wrong with us. And then we continue to strive for this level of perfection that we never really can reach. And so it's really common for women. But what I would say is that what I found in my work is that it's not just about being a people pleaser or saying, not ever knowing how to say no. It manifests in different ways depending on the person. And so for me, I call myself a performer. I joke that I'm a gold star chaser. And the way that it looks for me is that, most of my adult life, I have been chasing gold stars because I thought if I could just be the best or the most entertaining in the room, then people would like me and I would feel safe around other people. People would approve. But it really depends on the person. So I've created, different approval-seeking personality types. So sometimes a lot of people in sort of the coaching or the health or the healing fields tend to manifest as helpers. And these are the types of people who, are always trying to help because we feel like if we're useful, then other people will approve of us. Other people will give us positive recognition and feedback.
I'm smiling because I think you just nailed my type right there.
That's a really common one. But then there are a lot of people who are chameleons where they're just really good at blending in to their social environment. A lot of people are what I call scaredy cats, which are the ones who would just do not want to be seen at any cost. But then, this does show up with men as well. And so, I notice with men, there's a lot of tough guys out there where, they get approval by always being, competent and never asking for help. But obviously that shows up for women as well. So It really does depend on the person.
I think that's a great, actually, this is a theme kind of personally in my life, but also what I'm seeing in my clients' life is this need to do it all, have it all, and do it perfectly.
Yes.
And I think that I've made big progress in letting go of some of that perfection stuff. But it still creeps up. It'll rear its ugly head when, and it seems like it's for me, and in the coaching world, we kind of understand how our own inner self-talk can really start to do a number on what we believe and think about ourselves. But tell me, when somebody has like the house and the kids and the guy and the cars and like sort of all of those out like external things that you look around at your life and you think, God, I should be so happy right now, but something's missing.
Yeah.
How do you help your clients begin to even sort of get the awareness of this inner stuff that's going on?
Yeah, and that is really what my work is about, is really that awareness, because otherwise we can't. There's a lot of like, I should just be happy. Why am I so miserable? I should just be grateful, for everything that I have. And so then on top of the that kind of discomfort, there's this level of shame, like, oh, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just be happy? And so we hide it even more. But the way that this stuff starts is that, for whatever reason, like we talked about socialization and, those ideals of the good woman. But for whatever reason, and it usually happens when we're young, we pick up on these messages that there are just parts of ourselves that are not fit for human consumption. And so we hide them away. We decide that we have to hide them. And then we put up this facade. And that's what I call the approval-seeking facade, where we try to become someone else, or we try to overcompensate for parts of ourselves that we think we need to hide. And then that becomes the habitual behavior. That becomes the approval-seeking addiction. And so then what happens is that we essentially, we create this whole life. And this is what happened to me, was we create this whole life that looks great on the outside, but we don't actually fit into our life. Like, we can have a job, we can have a relationship, we can have an entire existence where it's like everything looks great, but it's like we've created that out of this facade, but we don't fit into it. And so we can't really connect the dots on why it doesn't feel right. And so, that is why I'm out there with this message, is because for the longest time, I was like, what is wrong with me? I do not understand what is wrong with me. I'm doing everything right.
And that's such a disconcerting feeling, right? Because you start to think, well, am I not grateful? Exactly what you said.
Yeah.
I want to come back to something you wrote in your article, because you just mentioned it too, which you say that we have a desire to hide parts of ourselves that we don't want other people to know about.
Yeah.
Because what's the underlying fear there?
Well, okay. So as humans, we, this is it. It's a fundamental human drive to want to connect and want to belong and want to, have intimacy with other human beings. But what happens is we learn that there are parts of us, it could have been from our upbringing. A lot of times people who really resonate with my work come from, have had some trauma, or have grown up in households where, things were very unpredictable.
Yes.
And so we learn to adapt. We learn to cope by hiding parts of ourselves, or keeping quiet, or staying invisible, or making sure everyone's happy. And so I forgot your question.
Well, just basically the fear. Like what are we trying
to?
The fear.
So then we're afraid. We pick up on this message that we're not safe being who we are. We're not safe being ourselves. And if you think about it, like if you think of Maslow's hierarchy of human needs, it's like, if we, security trumps self-actualization every time.
Yes.
So if we don't feel safe being who we are, then we can never reach any of those higher levels towards self-actualization. We're always going to be undermining ourselves. And so that's the fear, is like and you know how it is, like when you pick up on these messages when you're young, it becomes wired into your circuitry. It becomes part of your unconscious, and you are sort of behaving from these types of like base sort of primal instincts to stay safe. So, I'm pretty irreverent in my work. I don't take myself too seriously. I use a lot of humor, but the bottom line is this is very, very deep work.
Well, and I don't think I've never heard anybody explain it like that. Like, I think you're brilliant. So if you look at just basic needs, right,
Yeah.
and then you take a look at what the goal is, and I think what I know in my experience anyway is that for me, when I've explained it, or when I talk with my clients too, I say it's like part of yourself you put on mute. It's like somehow you tone it back, or or it can be like a slow amputation, or it can feel like that, right, where there's not full expression of who you are, your personality, and at some point, I have this belief, and I want to see if you see this with your clients too, is at some point, your ability to tolerate that expires. You get so tired of the facade that you literally cannot keep it up. And somehow life will hit you hard with a message.
Yes.
Is that, or at least...
I'll share my story.
I love it.
You know, actually, so as you all know, I'm like, you know, like the gold star chaser. And, you know, part of that is just I'm a natural achiever and I like to achieve. But, you know, I had been an achiever, and I was pregnant with twins. I was 6 months pregnant with twins, and it took me about 6 years to get pregnant. So I was finally pregnant with twins, and I had just got my master's, and for the longest time I'd wanted to become a policy analyst, and I was working for a progressive think tank. And at the time, I was working on a report on the home mortgage interest rate deduction, and I was putting that together for the Oregon legislature. And my brother knocked on the door and told me that my mom was in the hospital. And long story short, she died of heart failure when I was 6 months pregnant. And, you know, the babies came 3 months later. And, you know, when you lose someone like that, and you have the babies, it's sort of like a lot of things feel like you're walking through fog. Yeah. But one thing became crystal clear to me, and that was that I hated my life. And I finally admitted it to myself, and it was like that circumstance of losing my mom and then having these newborn babies, you know, really made me finally stop being an overachiever. But it's like what Oprah says, you know, life tries to get our attention, and it starts out as a whisper. Yes. You know, and I was too busy to listen to whispers or knocks or anything like that. And so really I got delivered a pretty, you know, a pretty heavy brick to the head. And so finally I stopped and I looked around, and I call it that time in my life when I lost the ability to tolerate bullshit. And I finally gave myself permission to do what I really wanted, which at that time was to read woo-woo books about past life regression and reincarnation and angelic encounters. And that small step, even though it seemed insignificant, really was what set me on my course to find out who I really was. But that's, I mean, to your point, you know, a lot of times we don't, you know, it's just not uncomfortable enough. Yeah. Like, it's like we choose the discomfort that we know versus the discomfort that we don't. We totally. We want to take the risk. And for me, it really did require that brick. And so part of my work is that I don't want people to have the brick. Like, I want people to have the information that they can get from my experience to, you know, start seeing this and start becoming aware of this sooner.
To pay attention to the whispers, right?
To pay attention to those whispers.
Yeah. And so what I think is really interesting too about the work that you do, and just and humans in general, is what you said about how we'll tolerate the discomfort of what we know, as opposed to the discomfort of change where there's uncertainty. Yeah. And yet the gift and like sort of the beauty of life often is on that other side of that risk. And it's somehow having either the mentorship or the belief, or even your, like, somebody's guidance to help you establish. Yeah. Right. Like, is it confidence that people need then to trust, or what is it?
I think it is. You know, part of my work is about building that muscle, because it's not something we're born with. But the other thing is that when we are when we're stuck in the approval trap, is what I call it, we're all about staying in our comfort zone because it's not comfortable to risk someone hating on us. It's not comfortable, to not fit in. It's not comfortable to risk that sort of thing. And so we want everything to be smooth. We don't want to ruffle any feathers. And so we're all about staying in the comfort zone. And so that's our pattern that we're addicted to. And what I tell a lot of people is that, success and living a life that is rewarding and feels good and is a real reflection of who you are is all about embracing the other side of that, which is uncomfortable. It's about getting into the discomfort zone. And when you're willing to get into the discomfort zone in honor of yourself and who you really are, that is how you grow that courage muscle. And it may start with something that seems insignificant on the surface, like reading woo-woo books, despite what they'll say over at the Hatfield School. But those little steps are how you start to grow your courage muscle and see that it's actually okay. It's actually safe. And this is how we also convince that part of us, that primal part of us that is constantly telling us it's not safe to be who we are. That's how we convince that part of us that it's actually safe. It's actually, in fact, and this is what I do. This is the work that I do with my clients is to convince that primal part of us that it's actually safer to be who you are. That's where you're going to find the true connection. That's where you're going to find true belonging. That's where you're going to find true intimacy, because what happens is we are settling for a false sense of belonging. And when you do that, when you're stuck in the approval trap and you settle for a false sense of belonging, you're never experiencing true intimacy. So what we do in the work we do is we get people to understand that it's actually safe to be who you are.
For anybody watching, I feel like you're speaking directly to me on some stuff for me in my life right now. So, and beyond valuable, honestly, beyond valuable.
Oh,
Amy, yeah. So, maybe just share a little bit about how do people get to learn more about you? I mean, you've got such a wealth of knowledge and obviously the help that you can give your clients. How does somebody who, because I guess for me, and I guess, it always comes back to your personal experience. And I guess I had an undercurrent of awareness that things weren't right. But I was in deep denial. I still wanted to tightly hang on to a vision that I'd crafted of what I thought my life should look like. That it was hard for me to even, and I think you said the key words, admit to myself that actually it didn't feel good. And so for somebody listening or for watching or who's read your article, how do they start to, even learn from you and find out more about you? Can you share all of the different ways to?
It's really simple. So I mentioned that I had created 8 different approval-seeking personality types. So what I would say as the first step is find out what your approval-seeking personality type, and I have created a quiz, and so it's over at approvalquiz.com.
And we'll have it as a link just below this video too, just for anybody who's watching. You can click in the description, and you'll see a link right there to Amy's quiz. Perfect.
Yeah, and that way, you can kind of find out how this is showing up for you, and then if you take the quiz, you'll get hooked into a series of emails from me with more, and then you'll get hooked into my newsletter. And then I'm over at livebrazen.com. You can also take the quiz there. There's a link to take the quiz there. So if you just wanted to head there too, it's there. And
that's the first step, right?
What's that?
That's the first step then, right?
Yeah, that's the first step.
Okay, perfect. Any last words of advice for somebody who's in that place of sort of either the whispers and the knocks have been coming and the brick is on its way, any sort of, I can guarantee that there's going to be people reading this or reading your article and watching who are like, oh my God, that's totally me.
Yeah, I'll try to be quick. But when I was little, my mom used to tell me, Amy, no matter what you do, not everyone is going to like you. And even though that was kind of a little bit negative, it was oddly reassuring. And I kind of took that advice and I created a whole tool around it called the 1/3 Rule of Tribes. And basically what it says is that if you divide the entire universe into thirds, there's always going to be a third who I call the haters. And no matter what you do, they're always going to hate. They're the ones that are like rolling their eyes, or, they're the ones that, they walk out or they send you a snarky email. And really you can't control for that. But there's always another third who are the neutrals. And they're the ones, it's like a lot of my family members are like this, where, they can take it or leave it. And there's no way that you can control for that. And then there's a final third. And this third is what I like to call your tribe. These are the people who love you and they are just waiting for you, and you have something that they need. But this is where you find that true belonging. These are your people. And so what I would say is that, the problem that a lot of us, the mistake that a lot of us make is that we spend most of our time obsessing over trying to get the haters and the neutrals to approve of us or to like us. And in the process, we become invisible to our tribe. And so my final advice is stop trying to be all things to all people. Understand that there's nothing you can do. Some people are going to, they're always going to be haters. They're always going to be neutrals. But if you just stop trying to change who you are to get them to like you, which is impossible, then you are going to find your people. You're going to find your tribe. You're going to find the true belonging that, really is a primal need for all of us.
I think every single person needed to hear that exact piece of advice. You're amazing. Thank you so much for being with me and for sharing. Like, even in just 15 minutes, you shared, or 20 minutes, you've shared like a wealth of information and some really solid insights. And, for those of you watching who haven't had the chance to see Amy's article, just simply drop down. There's a link to the magazine there. It's jenniferpowder.com, Energy to Thrive magazine. You'll find not only Amy, but other great experts who are talking about things just as important as this. And Amy, we'll have all your links there too, but thank you. You are doing such amazing work in this world.
Thank you.
And it was my pleasure to get to meet you in Atlanta in person, and of course to be in touch and connect with you here.
Same here. Likewise. Thank you, Jennifer.
Awesome. Have a good rest of your day. And for those of you watching, we'll be back again with more interview series for the Energy to Thrive magazine this week. See you later.